Universities have won a lot of praise for selling off their direct investments in coal, all in the name of climate change. But when you actually dig into the details, it turns out their efforts are mostly window dressing. For example, Georgetown University said it would purge its $1.5 billion endowment of direct coal holdings. The university later said the amount involved was, quote, insubstantial. Oxford said in May that it would avoid direct investments in coal and oil sands companies in its $2.6 billion endowment. Easy to say because the British university held a none. Syracuse similarly announced it would divest from fossil fuels, only to say it had no direct holdings. Alix joins me now. And Alix, these divestments are only for direct holdings. When it comes to money overseen by outside investors, that's a whole different story as well.
Right, and it really becomes a question of how far do you take these divestments when it comes to coal companies. And a really good example comes from the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund. The state ordered it to divest itself of all its coal holdings, and that's going to be about $4.5 billion at least, anywhere between 50 and 70 companies. But the interesting thing was it wasn't just any pure coal company. It was any company that gets 30% or more of its revenue from coal. And that actually means utilities, like, for example, a Duke Energy. So the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund would have to sell that utility. And that's where these things you would think could make some kind of difference when you have the trickle-down effect. The tricky part is the big guys like BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto, that you think are the biggest miners in the world. You would think that they'd be the dirtiest. Well, they get under 30% of their revenue from coal, so they wouldn't count. Never mind what fossil fuels goes into, say, making something else.
But they're so giant so that it's spread out
exactly. They're much
widely.
more diversified, whereas Duke was really all about coal. They're trying to quickly diversify, say, into nuclear energy as well as alternative energy, but they got a lot of coal on their back. And this is where you see maybe perhaps more at stake, I guess you would say, in terms of the coal companies.
I mean, I thought it was an interesting angle because so many student activists would get on universities' cases and ask them to get rid of all of this in their endowments. There was a lot of gestures being made here, but it turned out to be largely empty, mainly symbolic. And now a lot of environmentalists are accusing student groups of being complicit in all this because they applauded the universities when they said, okay, we will get rid of some of these direct investments.
Well, sure, but no one actually is going to go and do the work and find out that it's only about $25 million of fossil fuel stock, right? I mean, that's going to take, we're going to do that because we're journalists, but that's not, you know.
And the way that you explain what happened with Norway is a really good indication of how deep it gets, how you have to really dig into the numbers and look into a company like Duke Energy, which on the face of it would not look like a bad investment.
Utility, very different. Yeah. So it's just the next level down, I think you would say.
All right.